For this week's weekly grammar practice, we're going to go over last week's quiz. Hopefully it will help all of us, especially because the quiz grades for last week's grammar practice were not stellar. So I'm hopeful that just looking back at the questions and going over the answer choices and help me reminding you of some of the rules will help you as you prepare to take this week's grammar quiz. So let's get into question 1. We had 46.2% correct on this question. So fewer than half of you got this question correct. The part that we're looking at is lives and how, but when we are looking at grammar, whether you're talking about an EOC question or an ACT question, we always need to look at more than just the underlined portion. Just because you see a fanboy does not necessarily mean that a comma should go in front of it. And it certainly doesn't mean that a semicolon should go in front of it. So if you look at the entire sentence, what you'll discover is that you actually don't have two independent clauses joined by a fanboy, so you don't need a comma. And you also don't have items in a series with a conjunction, so this is not the Oxford comma either. There's actually no reason for a comma here. This is just a double dependent clause that is serving as an object of the verb reveals. So we actually don't need a comma there. We definitely don't need a semicolon because it's not two separate sentences. And we don't need a colon there. I feel like that one was just kind of made up. Anyway, it was. I made it up. So there's no need for a comma. When we do ACT prep in junior year, one of our mantras is when in doubt, comma out. Often on the ACT, you're removing commas more than you are adding commas. So if there is not a specific grammar rule that you know of, if it's not one of those comma rules that we've talked about this year, leave the comma out. Okay, question 2 we did better on. We had 71.8% correct. This one does have a lot of commas. The reason is because the first part of the sentence is actually an introductory phrase. You have the phrase in Oedipus Rex. So that's introducing the rest of the sentence. So you do need a comma after that phrase. So you need a comma after Rex. Then you have the subject of the sentence, Oedipus. Then after Oedipus's name, you have what we call an appositive. An appositive is a non-essential phrase that renames what comes before it. Oedipus, the king of Thebes, tries to avoid the prophecy. The king of Thebes is renaming Oedipus. It's not needed for the sentence to still be true, so we do need commas around it, just like we would put commas around any other non-essential phrase. So you need a comma after Rex, a comma after Oedipus, and a comma after Thebes. It is a lot of commas, but there is a specific grammar rule for each one of those commas. Question 3, we had about half of you get that one correct. The colon in this case is functioning as a separation between two independent clauses. Now, you can use a semicolon to separate two independent clauses, which is the third option. However, there is no comma after the name Oedipus for this one. So when you look at the entire sentence and not just the underlined portion, you will notice that the phrase, who was once a cursed man, is a non-essential phrase. That means that I need to put either commas around it or dashes around it. You could also do parentheses, but there are no dash or parentheses options here in these answer choices. So you've got to go with commas. So because you only have the option of commas, you're going to put a comma after Oedipus, and then you're going to put a comma after man. And the only one of those that does that is the first answer choice. And in this case, the colon is functioning as a separation between the first independent clause and the second independent clause, which is explaining the first, which is exactly what colons can do. Question 4 had less than half of you get it correct. A lot of people for this one put the first answer choice, which is duties, comma, loyalty to family and obeying. Well, there are a couple of issues with this, but a big red flag is the word obeying. It does not parallel with loyalty. Even if you only have 2 items, even if it's not 3 items in a series, those 2 items still need to be parallel. So an ing word is not going to match up with a noun. So we need to make sure that we fix the parallel structure issue in this example. So it can't be the first option, and it also can't be the last option. So now I've narrowed it down to the second and third options, which means I'm really just looking at the comma after family. Now, the comma after family does come with a fanboy, so I'm going to look at two things. Do I need a comma with a fanboy because I have two independent clauses joined by a fanboy with a comma? Or do I need a comma there because I have items in a series, and that's the Oxford comma? Neither one of those statements are true. I don't have a complete sentence on the right side of the and I don't have items in a series. I only have two things. If it's only two things, you don't use the comma before the and. So you need to take the comma out, which means option 2 is the correct answer. Question 5, I think, was the trickiest one. About half of you got it correct. So automatically, I can eliminate the third and fourth option because those options are not parallel. Now, when I'm looking at the first two options, the only difference is the comma after the word themes. So what I've got to do is read the entire sentence and figure out what's going on grammatically with that sentence to see if I need a comma there or not. Now, we've talked about such as phrases, and we've definitely said do not put a colon with a such as phrase. However, sometimes you do use a comma, and it really all depends on whether it's non-essential or not. So is this phrase, such as fate versus free will, redemption through suffering, and feeling conflicted between personal and political duty, non-essential? If it's non-essential, we need a comma. If it's essential for the sentence to make sense, then we don't use a comma. So let's read that sentence and see if it's really needed without the phrase. Without the phrase, it says, the plays explore themes. That might be true, but it doesn't really mean the same thing. All literature explores themes. So I would say that this such as phrase is really essential to the meaning of the sentence. So since it is essential, I would not use a comma. However, I could see where one might argue that this phrase is not essential because the play still explores themes, whether they're about fate versus free will or whatever. So if you put answer choice A, I probably will give you points back on that question because I can kind of see it, but I do think the best answer choice is B. That's the end of our review of last week's quiz. I hope this has been helpful. If you still don't understand what you're missing on the grammar quizzes, please let me know. I'll be happy to go over it with you in person and we can talk through anything you're not understanding. You'll have another quiz on Friday.